The better you are at fighting orcs, the more of them show up. Only one strategy works: be unbelievably boring. And the Eldar figured this out 68 million years ago. Humanity did the exact opposite. That decision, born from ambition and a species-wide inability to leave well enough alone, may be the only reason the Emperor of Mankind still draws breath. The Orks WAAAGH field, a psychic force that reshapes reality through collective belief, combined with trillions of orcs regarding the Emperor as the biggest, most fight-worthy human in history, may be sustaining him more effectively than the 1,000 psykers the Golden Throne consumes daily. The lore doesn't confirm this theory, but it supports it from so many independent directions that the Eldar's ancient survival strategy becomes the key to understanding everything. The Aeldari, the ancient Eldar, coexisted with the orcs across 68 million years, a span so vast the Imperium's entire history barely registers against it. Their story begins in the War in Heaven. The Old Ones, engineers who were old when the stars were young, engineered species as weapons to fight the Necrons and the star gods they served. The Eldar were built for psychic mastery, beings of extraordinary warp sensitivity, designed to manipulate the immaterial realm with precision no other species could approach. The Krork were built for brute force. Where Eldar were precise, the Krork were overwhelming, massive, brutal, fungal. This was the species the Eldar originally coexisted with. The Krork, engineered by the Old Ones to fight the Necrons and the star gods they served. Eldar channeled the warp through discipline and finesse. Krork generated a raw psychic field through sheer collective presence, a gestalt emanation that intensified as their numbers swelled and their violence escalated. Two sibling species, engineered by the same creators for opposite purposes. Both served the Old Ones. Both survived the war's cataclysmic aftermath. And when the Old Ones were gone, the Eldar and the Orks, the Krork's degraded but terrifyingly effective descendants, faced each other across a shattered galaxy with nobody left to aim them in the same direction. What followed was the longest coexistence between predator species in galactic history. Across those 68 million years, the Eldar watched orc biology perform exactly as the Old Ones designed it. Orcs reproduce asexually through spores released during combat and death. Every greenskin killed sheds microscopic spores into soil, into bombed-out rubble, into the crevices of ruined structures. Those spores germinate through a life cycle producing squigs, snotlings, Gretchen, and eventually orc boys, each born hardwired to find the nearest fight and make it louder. Orcs also grow physically larger and more powerful the more they fight. Size is combat experience written in muscle and bone. The biggest orc on any battlefield earned that mass through killing, and his body grew to reflect the record. But the Eldar, with psychic senses designed by the same engineers who built the orcs, perceived a deeper pattern. Fighting the greenskins didn't merely breed more of them, it excited them. Engaging orcs in combat accelerates their growth and evolution drastically, a fact Imperial generals would eventually learn 10,000 years into the Imperium's existence, but one the Eldar grasped 68 million years before the first human picked up a rock. Kill 100, and you seed the ground for 1,000. Win a campaign, and you become the most exciting thing in the sector, pulling every warband within a dozen systems straight toward your borders. Victory and defeat feed the same cycle. More orcs, stronger orcs. Orcs who now find you interesting enough to visit again, and again, and again. So they chose obscurity. Across those immeasurable aeons, Eldari civilization built its relationship with the orcs around deliberate, disciplined avoidance. They redirected greenskin attention, misdirected it, let the orcs crash into each other, into other species, into anything that wasn't Eldar. Orc attention functioned like gravitational pull. The more interesting you made yourself, the harder it dragged. And the Eldar shaped their entire strategic posture around staying beneath the threshold that would trigger a full-scale WAAAGH aimed at their worlds. a species built for psychic mastery rather than brute warfare, they maintained, across a duration that would reduce most civilizations to geological strata, the discipline to appear boring to the one species that could have ended them through sheer enthusiasm. Then humanity arrived and rejected every variable in that equation. During the dark age of technology, human civilization expanded across the stars with a technological prowess unmatched before or since. Weapons that extinguished suns, artificial intelligences that could outthink the collected minds of Eldar farseers, military force projected with the cheerful thoroughness of a species that hadn't yet learned to be afraid of the dark. Golden Age humanity's combat prowess caused an unprecedented wave of growth in the Orks. And in a galaxy where Orks had been fighting for tens of millions of years before humans learned to chip flint, unprecedented meant the Eldar were watching something they had genuinely never witnessed in 68 million years of careful observation. Human fleets carved through Ork-held space with overwhelming technological superiority. Human armies annihilated greenskin enclaves world after world. Every victory pumped more spores into more soil on more planets, and more critically, pumped more excitement into the collective Ork psyche. The greenskins weren't demoralized by these losses. They were exhilarated. Interesting weapons, clever tactics, and the humans showed up reliably to fight again tomorrow. Every rematch produced bigger Orks, more numerous Orks, more fervent Orks, all aimed squarely at the fascinating species, giving them the best scrap since the war in heaven itself. Everything the Eldar had spent 68 million years avoiding, humanity accomplished in a few thousand years of reckless expansion. The Great Crusade accelerated the disaster beyond anything the galaxy had experienced. The Emperor of Mankind personally led the Ullanor Crusade against the largest Ork concentration ever defeated by the Imperium before the War of the Beast. The single most powerful psychic being in human history took the field against the greatest greenskin empire in the galaxy. In mud and wreckage, surrounded by a tide of green, the Emperor fought the war boss of Ullanor and broke him, shattered the largest Ork empire in recorded history. An Eldar farseer watching Ullanor would have seen something far darker than triumph, the ignition of an engine that could never be shut down. The most powerful human alive had made himself the center of the largest Ork event in millions of years, engraving himself into the collective greenskin consciousness as the biggest, hardest, most fight-worthy human ever born. Their benchmark, their obsession. The fight every Ork in the galaxy would spend 10,000 years trying to have again. The Eldar would grasp what that means with a clarity no human scholar could match. They are, by design, the galaxy's foremost psychic species. The same old ones who built the Orks built them. The WAAAGH field is a collective psychic phenomenon generated by the entire Ork species, scaling with both the number of Orks present and their engagement in combat. It operates through the warp, but is distinct from human psyker sorcery or chaos worship. A gestalt psychic field, the unconscious sum of every Ork mind in proximity, pooled into a single force with one defining characteristic. If enough Orks believe something is true, it becomes true, physically, measurably. Ork belief demonstrably affects reality, and Ork technology functions better simply because Orks believe it does. 68 million years of sensing that pressure, a species built for psychic mastery rather than brute warfare, designed by the same creators who engineered the Orks. Evidence of the field's power is staggering in its specificity. Ork mech boys build vehicles from scrap metal, salvaged parts, and what can charitably be described as enthusiasm. Sloppy welds, engines held together with wire and optimism, fuel systems that sometimes amount to a bucket. By any rational assessment, these machines shouldn't function. But when an Ork drives one and a mob of boys watches, the thing screams across the battlefield at speeds Imperial engineers can't replicate with proper materials and proper blueprints. Paint it red and it goes faster, measurably faster. Every Ork in the galaxy knows with bone-deep certainty that red ones go faster. Ork firearms follow the same logic. A shuta is often a metal pipe with a rudimentary trigger, no rifling, sometimes no firing mechanism at all in any conventional sense. An orc points it at an enemy, pulls the trigger, and it fires, because the orc believes guns fire when you pull the trigger, and the 100 orcs behind him believe the same, and the WAAAGH field translates that collective certainty into a physical outcome. Imperial Mechanicus adepts who've captured these weapons report they sit inert in human hands. Guns won't fire. Vehicles won't start. Painboy surgical tools, implements used for operations that violate every anatomical principle on patients who survive and walk away functional, produce nothing without the gestalt behind them. The field doesn't grant unlimited reality warping. It specifically affects domains within orc understanding: war, technology, survival. Within those domains, its power is absolute. And that power depends on the coherence of orc belief. Orc convictions aren't random or contradictory. They're startlingly consistent across the entire species, across every world, every sector, despite greenskins having no written language, no centralized religious authority, and no educational system beyond the principle that the bigger one hits the smaller one until the smaller one learns. Red goes faster, blue is lucky, purple is sneaky. You ever seen a purple orc? These beliefs are universal because they're genetically encoded, hardwired by the old ones 65 million years ago. The same creators who designed the Eldar for psychic precision designed the orcs for psychic unanimity. Orcs aren't stupid, they're simple, and that distinction carries the entire argument. Mech boys build functional technology through intuitive genetic knowledge inherited from the old ones. Pain boys perform surgery that works on patients it shouldn't. Orc society maintains a hierarchy that's brutal but operationally effective across millions of worlds for millions of years. Their worldview is internally consistent, and the WAAAGH field renders it self-reinforcing. Orcs' is never defeated in battle. Win, and you win. Die fighting, and you die doing what you loved. Retreat, and you come back later with more boys for a bigger fight. Also a win. No configuration of battlefield outcomes registers as a loss. Every orc holds this conviction simultaneously, feeding it into the WAAAGH field with every breath, reinforcing a collective psychic certainty that hasn't wavered in 65 million years. The Eldar dodged this engine for 68 million of those years. They didn't just avoid orc weapons, they avoided orc thoughts. A civilization built for warp mastery understood, long before humanity drew its first breath, that orc attention is orc belief, and orc belief reshapes the material universe. Humanity's emperor stood at the center of that belief at Ulanor and never stepped out. And what keeps his shattered body tethered to reality would appall any Eldar psychic engineer. The Golden Throne sits in the deepest sanctum of the Imperial Palace on Terra. Upon it rests the Emperor, a being whose physical body is a desiccated corpse sustained by technology no living human fully understands. He exists only in a psychic state, consciousness active in the warp while his flesh decays on the throne. The device was originally built for the Webway project, a human-controlled network of warp tunnels. When that project failed catastrophically during the Horus Heresy, the throne was jury-rigged into its current role, keeping the Emperor's psychic presence anchored to material reality and maintaining the Astronomicon, the beacon that allows Imperial ships to navigate the warp and holds the Imperium together as a functioning civilization. 1,000 psykers die every day to power it, collected by the black ships from across the Imperium, tithed from every world producing psykers, transported to Terra, drained of psychic energy. Roughly 365,000 per year. Across 10,000 years, approximately 3.65 billion human souls consumed. And the Golden Throne is deteriorating, technological failures accumulating beyond the Adeptus Mechanicus's ability to repair. The machine is breaking, slowly, irreversibly. 1,000 psykers a day, poured into a device demanding more and delivering less with each century. The Eldar channel psychic power through disciplines refined across 68 million years, a species built for psychic mastery by the same creators who designed the Orks. The Golden Throne is a tourniquet applied 10,000 years ago by a species that expected someone would find a real solution before it failed. No one has. Against that backdrop, crumbling technology, escalating sacrifice, a countdown with no one to stop it, put the other half of the equation. More orcs exist in the galaxy than any other sentient species. Every sector, every segmentum, every forgotten rock orbiting every dying star. The WAAAGH field they generate scales with their numbers and their combat engagement. Numbers beyond any census, engagement constant by species design. A psychic force of incomprehensible magnitude. No machine, no sacrifice, no maintenance by priests who barely understand their own tools. Permanent, galaxy-wide, ever-intensifying. Orcs regard the Emperor as the big Humi boss, the biggest, most fight-worthy human in history. Ago.Humanity, the most influential orc in the galaxy, fights his greatest battles specifically against the servants of the Emperor of Mankind, drawn to the Emperor's servants because attacking them is the closest any living orc can get to the ultimate fight. Ulanor didn't fade from greenskin memory. It seared into the collective psyche. Every orc who has fought a human since, every orc who has seen an Imperial Aquila stamped on a tank and recognized it as the boss's mark, has added another drop to the ocean of belief saying, the Emperor is real, the Emperor is powerful, the Emperor is still worth fighting. The Yarrick precedent makes this more than idle speculation. Commissar Yarrick fought orcs for decades on Armageddon and became, in orc cultural consciousness, a figure of almost mythological stature, the tough old Humi who wouldn't die. The orc's conviction that he was unkillable, that he could strike down a greenskin with a glance from his augmetic eye, may have made those beliefs function as a kind of psychic armor layered on top of his actual capabilities. Orc collective belief about Yarrick actively altered their behavior and, plausibly, reality itself around him. The WAAAGH field, pointed at a single human, elevated him beyond what biology and training alone could account for. Scale that from one commissar on one planet to the Emperor across the entire galaxy. From a planetary garrison's worth of belief to the psychic conviction of trillions, all holding genetically consistent views that the Emperor is the biggest, the strongest, the fight above all fights. Amplified by every war the Imperium wages against the Greenskins, because every battle reinforces Orc conviction that the Emperor's forces deserve fighting, which feeds directly back into their belief about the Emperor himself. The Imperium sacrifices 1,000 psykers daily through a failing machine. Trillions of orcs pump belief into a field that doesn't deteriorate, needs no maintenance, and grows stronger every time someone fights them. The Eldar would see this architecture clearly, clearer than any human could. 68 million years of coexistence with the Orks. A species designed for psychic mastery by the same creators who built the WAAAGH field's source organisms. They understood something the Imperium refused to examine. The psychic relationship between humanity and the Orks had grown beyond anyone's control, and the forces sustaining the Emperor's corpse weren't limited to what the tech priests plugged into the Golden Throne. They spent those 68 million years ensuring the WAAAGH field was never aimed at them, perfected the discipline of denying orcs a target for collective belief. Every branch of Eldar civilization, from the most militant to the most reclusive, organized itself around a single psychic truth. Don't let the orcs believe in you. Humanity gave the orcs the biggest target in galactic history, then spent 10,000 years making it brighter through constant warfare. And the WAAAGH field has been aimed at the Emperor since Ulanor. Every century of war focuses the beam tighter. Every Imperial victory against the Orks reinforces greenskin belief that the Emperor's forces merit the fight. Every defeat reinforces it too, because Orks is never defeated, and a species that can't lose can't stop believing. Win or lose, fight or die, the Orks breed more orcs, generate more belief, and point the whole staggering weight of the WAAAGH field at the being they regard as the ultimate opponent. The Imperium didn't design this system. They stumbled into it through exactly the aggressive, attention-gorging warfare the Eldar spent 68 million years refusing to wage. And the result is something nobody planned, possibly the most powerful psychic life support system in the galaxy, running on the one resource the Orks will never stop generating, the unshakable conviction that the Emperor is worth fighting. The Eldar chose boredom, survived 68 million years, watched younger species blunder into every mistake they'd learned to avoid, watched humanity make those mistakes loudest of all, watched the consequences coalesce into something no civilization intended or predicted, a psychic engine powered by the species the Imperium respects least, sustaining the being the Imperium worships most through a mechanism the Imperium doesn't know exists. 68 million years of Eldar discipline proved one thing: the safest strategy against the Orks is silence. Humanity screamed, and the echo might be the only thing keeping their god alive. The prosecution rests. Subscribe for more stories like this.